international master Zaur Tekev here. In this video course, I'm going to teach you how to play with white pieces against French defense. French is a very popular opening probably at any level, especially nowadays when the engine started quite liking it. I will show you what happened, why all of a sudden they started recommending the French as one of the best openings. And French seems to be an opening which is really hard to play against with white pieces, because even though if we even get the advantage according to the engine, in practice it's really hard to play because French is a counter-attacking opening. It's similar to the King's Indian defense, and it often happens that black just outplays their opponents from seemingly worse positions, just because they understand it better and know all the typical plans. So for that reason I decided to go with knight d2 here for white. I believe that this is easier to play in practice than other moves. For example, if we go with knight c3 here, this is considered the best move among grandmasters. There is this bishop b4 which is quite annoying, and now e5 is the best move after c5 a3. Now they usually take, and we get this quite specific pawn structure, which we need to study quite in depth because black has lots of different setups and ideas here. Queen a5, knight c6, knight e7, many things. Even sometimes they delay playing c5. And even if we go down the main line, yeah, you can see that it's quite a mess here. We ate some pawns, but our center is getting destroyed. So I think it's not very practical for club players to go for this. You have to study much theory, but it's not quite likely that you will face it quite often, and maybe you'll forget something in the way. Also, the move knight f6 is quite good here. The engines discovered that here, apart from bishop e7 or a6 or c takes d4, which are good and fighting options for black, there's also this, sorry, not immediately, first takes, and then this queen b6, the poisoned pawn variation. Our pawn on b2 is hanging, and if we sacrifice it, yeah, black goes down this line, and this was tried in the candidates tournament by Alexander Grishuk against Kirill Alexeyenko, and modern consensus is that it's equal. Like, white of course is trying to do something, but overall black is standing well. So I thought the workload and the simpleness, it's just better to go with knight d2. I believe that you'll have better practical results with this move. And in fact, knight d2 was played by Jan Nepomniachtchi against Ding Lejeune in their World Championship match. There is also the move e5, which seems to be quite interesting because against this black doesn't have many setups. But on the other hand, usually everyone knows how to play this. Yeah, this is something that players with black usually enjoy. They know all the typical ideas, all the maneuvers. Basically, the pawn structure got defined too early, and that's why black has comfortable play. Although white, of course, is better. Just in practice, you have to maintain the center, and black is trying to attack it. So it already puts white in somewhat defensive role. And the point is that you will maintain your center and only then step by step fight back. But it's not easy in practice if you're not a strong grandmaster. So we go with knight d2, and this move is nice because we don't block our c pawn, and at some point can play c3 and complete our pawn chain, so to say. But on the other hand, we don't put much pressure on black, and they have many moves. That shouldn't scare you because we have somewhat a universal setup here with knight gf3, bishop d3, castles, and all of that is discussed in the last chapter of the course. And overall, I tried to take, I think, an interesting approach here. Whenever we could hit black with some heavy ideas, we tried to do that. But if they choose a line like c5, where black is very solid, Then I tried to go with simplistic approach. Here I suggest that we take it. This was played many times by Mickey Adams, by Sergei Rublevsky, Sergei Tekeyev, also Hikaru Nakamura played it against Magnus Carlsen. So this is a very good move, but it's quite rare and it has very interesting ideas, and maybe Black will not be very much familiar with it. And I think even if we study the most principled moves with White against a prepared opponent, you are not likely to get much. So I think that's quite an interesting choice, and good that you don't need to memorize much. Where you need to memorize much is the line with knight f6. But I tried my best to explain what happens here because I decided to go with this move f4. And I believe that it's very unpleasant for Black to meet. From what I've seen in the database, Black often doesn't know how to react properly against this, and even experienced players often don't understand the ideas. I played around with the engine here and tried to understand deeply some maneuvers, and I think it worked pretty nicely, and we can enjoy playing this variation with White and probably win many games quickly and easily. There is also this move bishop e7, there is also knight c6, even f5 is covered in the last chapter, the move h6. Move a6 is covered in the chapter about isolated pawns. So basically after c5 we can take and they take back with the pawn. There I tried to understand more strategic ideas, so you would just understand how to play these positions, because Black has so many different options and it's very hard to memorize everything, but I hope that I help you navigate the rising types of game in that chapter, and you will have some success with it. And after d takes e4, we take back. This is the Rubinstein variation. Here my approach is still the same, and the first chapter got quite heavy, I think. Lots of lines that I showed you, but it's mostly so that you understand this pawn structure better, because as you can see here, after Black plays c5, d and c pawns get traded, and we are with this pawn structure that we can also achieve from this variation because of all of these traits. So overall I hope that you will understand how to play it, and even if you forget something, you'll figure it out based on the ideas that I showed you, and the ideas usually stick better. So I hope you will enjoy it and it will bring you success, and I will see you in the course. Bye. Hello everyone, I hope you liked the introduction video, and now we are gonna take a look at the Rubinstein variation. I think it makes the most sense to start the coverage with this one, because it's sort of like a very standard way of playing for Black. They basically want to put the knight here, then go with the other knight. The bishop may go here, they can castle and later play for c5. This bishop often gets developed to b7 after the pawn goes to b6. So as you can see, it's very schematic and sort of easy to play. So overall, I think there are two categories of people who choose this line to play with Black. It's usually either those who take, let's call it a lazy approach to the opening, so they just know the scheme and try to use it no matter what you do. And the other type of players are those who think that this is very close to equality, and they analyze it with engines and just try to polish it so that they later can equalize the game and just maybe make a draw. And the way it sounds, you can probably understand that that's about some more advanced players. For example, a German-born Grandmaster Georg Mayer, who currently represents Uruguay. He's one of the main experts in this system for Black, and he's played it against a very strong opposition. I remember his games about Fabiano Caruana, for example, where they had like a very big theoretical discussion here. But I think at the club level, you're mostly gonna be facing the sort of lazy players, and Because of that, I tried to choose a line where we can maybe have some even traps, so that those lazy players not knowing any intricacies may fall into that and you would score some victories rather effortlessly. But also, if they sidestep all of our ideas, then I try to actually go a bit off theory, so in case they are like that second category of players, they would still get surprised with our approach and what we have to get against them. But here, before going to look at the main move, which is knight to d7, I think we can start with some other options. For example, move knight f6 is not that of a good move, because we can actually take here and black has a very unpleasant choice. They can either take with a pawn, after which their pawn structure gets ruined, or take with a queen. So if they take with a queen, we just develop our knight, and now you see that this queen is in a bit of an unpleasant situation because it can get hit by our bishop from g5. So that's why h6 makes the most sense here to secure the queen's position, but it's again like a bit slow, so we may get some advantage thanks to that. If they play bishop d7, I want to introduce a very famous, I would say, trap. It can be seen in different tactical books. If they play bishop to c6, we can now trap this queen. And some of you may say, but wait, they can actually take on f3, and it seems like black is doing even more than okay here. But white has a winning move. You can maybe pause the video and fight it if you want, but yeah, I'm now gonna show it. It's move queen to d2, after which we protect our bishop, and their queen is about to get eaten. So if it goes to d4, then we have a discovery check, and this move doesn't save the queen because we just take it anyways. There is a pin. So bishop c6 is a big mistake. It's now they're again supposed to play move like h6, and here we have a choice. For example, castling is good, but also queen e2 is good. Here, if they play a move like bishop c6, we can now jump with a knight on e5. My main idea here is to illustrate you how the game may continue. You absolutely don't have to memorize anything here, but if they take such a pawn, you just go rook to g1, bishop needs to return, and now just bishop gets developed. If bishop to d6, then just f4, we bolster this knight here, and after knight d7 we just castle. Knight takes f7 is currently a threat. Before that it didn't work really, I think, because they apparently had queen h4 check at some point, or we just keep it for next. If they castle queenside, then knight takes on c6, and it's just an overwhelming advantage. So instead they maybe should go with bishop to d6. Now we may castle, knight here, c3, castles, rook to d1. So rook to d1 is a very interesting move actually. We basically want to play queen to e4, and you will see it right here. And their only good move is queen f5 against that. And now, if not rook d1, we would basically will have to go back or take their queen. But here we have queen h4 and our rook is protecting the bishop. So they have to go back, and now we eat the pawn and we have a winning position. So queen e2 is basically a very good move, but you can also just castle. I'm basically showing you typical ideas here. You've seen this again, yeah, and this f4 move is very strong here. They may go bishop d6 as well, and now rook to e1. It's sort of important that if they take control over the e5 square, we increase our control over it as well, because if bishop c6, you want to get your knight to e5 so that your knight is not hanging on f3. So you go here, and again, if bishop c6, you jump in. Now if castles, then you can just play c3, and later either bishop c2 and queen d3 is a typical way of playing, or your queen may jump to h5, then maybe you lift your rook on the third rank, or something of that sort. If they take here, then you also can take queen here, and yeah, it's just a better position for white, but I like this idea of playing bishop to d2. The point is that we are gonna go like b4 and b5 now, and if knight a6 stopping that, then rook to e3. We want to get rid of their queen, and then if they castle queenside, we'll roll our pawns here. If they castle kingside, we're gonna attack them there. So black's king is in a very bad situation here. We can get it like at any point of the board. Knight to c6, which is also possible. Then again, we bolster our center, and if castles, then we just play with bishop to c2. So let's say rook goes somewhere, and queen d3 is good. Also b4 is good. We just want to grab some space, and the idea is that if they move their knight, they cannot play c5 anymore. We now can jump in, or if they play with the bishop here, then we can go like this. And now what's good is that we can block with the rook, then move the queen, and then our rook goes somewhere with a discovery attack against their queen. And we basically with the b4 waited for the bishop to move away, because if we did it immediately, then they go knight e7 and their bishop is about to come to c6. That is possible as well. But of course, it's nothing like about memorization for you here. Maybe only the idea that you can put your knight on e5, and you need to be able to do that once their bishop is on c6. So you keep control over the square. And later you maybe even will play pawn to f4, and thanks to that, have a very strong centralized knight. They can also take with a g-pawn, and this move was played against me by Levi Rosman, Gotham Chess guy, I don't know how to call him, Gotham Chess YouTuber. And I went knight f3, and he did knight c6 here. This was just a blitz game on chess.com, and I think I played c3 and then bishop to b5 and then castle short, and he managed to put his bishop on b7, rook on g8, and queen on d5, and attacked me against my king here. And I had to be very precise not to lose that game. Got like into some endgame, down a pawn, and then somehow outplayed him. And as usual, what it happens in such hectic games, that it's all decided and time trouble. So I like promoted into a queen, and then had to force a draw not to lose on time. So instead, the improvement would be bishop c4. I think if I knew what I'm going to show you here, I would have like a much easier life against him in that game. So rook to g8 was played here, and now castles is met with e5. Here white still is gonna be better, but it's a bit tricky because they are gonna play bishop to g4, queen to d7, and castle queenside. So instead, I think bishop f4 is a very strong idea. The point is that they cannot take this pawn anyways. We are gonna just block their rook and win it. We don't even have to win it immediately. It's gonna be like staying there forever. We can go queen d2, long castles, and then bishop f1 or bishop f1 immediately. So they shouldn't take, and they cannot play e5 now. And our plan is simple. After, let's say, bishop d6, we put our bishop back. Now we covered everything on the g file, and we can castle wherever we want to, and queen going to d3, for example, hits that h7 pawn. So let's say if they go here, we just play queen d3, castle queenside, and what is solidly better here. So I don't think this knight f6 is a fortunate idea for black. So instead they may go knight d7, but also there is this so-called Fort Knox variation, bishop to d7. This is quite a rare move, but it's very solid. So it has some traps for white. I mean, white may try to play something like knight e2 g5, or first they may castle and go there, or queen e2 and then jump to g5. All sorts of idea, but if black knows what to do, which if they play this line they probably do, I think it's a bit pointless to do that, and why would we basically spend some time studying it if we can play simpler? So here instead I suggest a move knight e back to d2. The point is that we can reroute our knight later to c4 and then to e5, and just looks pleasant for white. For example, bishop e7, queen e2, castles rook to d1. Now if our knight jumps in there and they take, we can take with the pawn and our rook is exactly where it belongs to. So if they take, I mean, black is sort of out of moves here and we still can play something like c3 or maybe push the a pawn to grab some space. It's just a pleasant position for white. So they usually take and try to play something like c6. Then bishop f4, again, quite a pleasant position for white. Or maybe they play c5, after which we can take, and you see that our rook is exactly where it needs to be. Now they cannot take with the knight because of bishop takes h7 check, king takes, and we grab their queen. So they have to take with the bishop. And now we have a bishop pair advantage and we have 3 pawns against 2 pawns on the queen side. So it makes sense to play rook to b1, threatening to launch our pawns forward, and maybe we'll create a passed pawn and really grab a lot of space on the queen side, making it harder for black to arrange their pieces. So they should play a5, the move which is, I think, not that easy to play if you don't understand the strategy that well. But now, like, this inclusion of rook b1 and a5, it's in white's favor because we basically weaken their pawn structure. So we can just play bishop to f4, c3, bishop c2, knight jumps to d4, and we have a lot of control. Our knight is heading towards b5 at some point. Queen may go to d3, having that strong battery against their queens, against their king, sorry. So it's just a pleasant position, as you see. It's not much to learn at all, so I believe it's a fine approach for us. They may also take on e4 immediately. Someone actually has done it against me at some point. The point is that this way they don't know any theory at all. So I think a good rule of thumb in such a situation is that if you have a bishop on e4 and they are about to attack it with knight on f6, it makes sense to play c3 first. And if they play knight f6, you can now go to c2 instead of d3. Yeah, if you didn't prepare that square, you would have to go here. On c2, the bishop sits nice, because at some point queen d3 will happen with a battery against their queen. Maybe also bishop to b3, or maybe your rook will be opened on the d file, so it's just very useful to have it like this. So bishop d6, let's say queen to e2, knight b7, bishop d2. It's smart that we don't castle for now because they are not sure where we are gonna castle, so it's also hard for them to decide where to go. For example, if they castle here, we can go for queenside and now have some attack launched against them. For example, h5. They try rush pawns against us, we just block. They are going forward, we do too. So if they take, then just rook comes to g1 and that's gonna be just a devastating attack against their king. So it's a4, g5. It's just an illustrative line, of course. No need to memorize anything of this. Yeah, and actually, yeah, we better just go to b1 instead of taking. Because if we take, then they play rook to b8 and rook to a1 is coming as well. So no need for us to open extra lines against our king. And our bishop is quite strong here, attacking their king. So here we have this beautiful battery. Let's say they block. We take, and rook to h6. So as you can see, we have some threats such as doubling the rooks, creating a checkmate threat, and also taking on g6. Maybe the sacrifice will work at some point.